Hey, you are listening to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your washed out co host, Mark.
And I am your lively co-host, Josh. I know no cocaine was taken before this podcast, I promise.
I'm just like too pale for my own good and glow in any sort of light. And there's like a window right here. So if I'm hurting your eyes, sorry about that. Ed Billy has returned to join us again for Cocaine Bear.
Thank you
Hi,
guys for having me back.
Billy.
Thank you for having me back. And Mark, please get away from the light. You're too bright.
Uh, Carol Ann, stay away from the light.
Uh yeah, so Billy joins us again. For those of you guys that don't know, Billy joined us over the summer to talk about Nope and
Yep,
Crimes of the Future.
exactly.
And, you know, Billy's a friend of the show by now. So we're like, I feel like Billy would be a great guest to have back
Cocaine
for
Bear.
Cocaine Bear.
Yeah. I'm so glad to be here. Yeah, I was glad that you asked me to come back.
He's like, oh man, I get to have a reason to go see this movie.
Yes,
What?
exactly. I
Cocaine
wanted
Bear.
to see it already. It just gave me a good reason to see it opening weekend.
I find it amusing that the whole thing is very, very, very loosely based on actual events.
All right. So I have this I'm so glad you brought that up. So I have this article pulled up from Esquire magazine by Josh Rosenberg, and it was published a couple days ago as of this podcast. I think is the day that Cocaine Bear actually opened up in theaters. Quote, the event occurred back in September 1985 when drug smugglers in Tennessee wilderness accidentally dropped a load of 40 plastic containers of cocaine from their twin engine aircraft. According to New York Times, the smuggler named Andrew C. Thornton II also died when he exited the plane and his parachute failed. 2 months later, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation found nearly a 200-pound black bear dead from ingesting over 75 pounds of the smugglers' abandoned cocaine. Dr. Kenneth Alonzo, Georgia's chief medical examiner at the time, told the Times that the bear's stomach was literally, quote, packed to the brim with cocaine, end quote, when it overdosed. The drugs were later valued around $2 million. The bear's body was later sent to a taxidermist and given to the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area in Tennessee, where locals reportedly dubbed the animal uh
Cocaine Bear.
no, quote, Paulo Escobar, in reference to the Colombian drug kingpin uh, Paulo Escobar. The bear resides in Lexington, Kentucky's, quote, Fun Mall, end quote.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, road trip.
Up there, and I believe it's pronounced Chattahoochee.
Yeah,
Chattahoochee, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with names, much like Mark, so I have a
Well,
reason.
You mispronounce
with
them. I don't remember that. There's a difference.
Look,
and and
we
if you
we
ever heard
complete
the
each other.
Alan Jackson song, you'd hear it like 5,000 times, so you'd say it right.
Alan Jackson. Anyways, what did you guys think about Cocaine Bear? I am curious. Billy, since you are a guest, share your spoiler-free thoughts with us.
I thought I actually liked it. I mean, like I said, I took my boys with me and it was, I'm trying to tell you without telling you. It was a funny, gory kind of family movie. Now,
There's a lot of F bombs.
I'm getting ready to say, if you have little kids, yeah, this ain't the movie for them. Um, they don't do the Christmas story is not saying fudge, so we're gonna say little kids shouldn't go, but teenagers and everybody, the whole
It's
theater was dying laughing. So
it's
it was a good
rated
movie to
R
me.
for language and a little bit of blood.
Yeah,
Which,
exactly.
quote, a little bit of blood. I I wish there was more like I'm glad that like it they really leaned into like the horror comedy aspect of this and just like really how absurd this movie is and like how bananas this like actual thing
It's
that it's based on a true story is.
it's one of
Uh
those kind of brainless fun comedies where if you go in to analyze anything, it's gonna ruin it for you. But if you go in expecting like, dude, where's my car? But with a bear hopped up on cocaine, you're good.
I
That was me. I went in as the dude, where's my car? And the you may not agree, but some of it was like campy, but a good campy to me. Like just the comedy and the way they did some of the scenes just was like hilarious.
did
I do wish they had had more coked out bear though.
yeah. Yeah, so that's probably like I think while I do think that all of the stories like do converge together really well, I do kind of wish that they would have really like doubled down and leaned into the absurdity of this because
Yeah.
they definitely like you could definitely tell that they're like, all right, like it, I feel like Transformers is like another like great example where it's like, hey, like or Godzilla is probably a better example. Like there's only so much that like you can do with a giant lizard destroying buildings, right? So like you have to have like a reason for there to be people, so you have to give your audience someone to connect with. And that's kind of what they feel like a lot of the human subjects in this movie feel like. You mentioned Dude, Where's My Car? This movie feels more like weird creature features from like the 80s and like Piranha and but uh like Return of the Living Dead and just these like really like I'll say there. This movie also reminded me a lot of Sharknado. I will say
Yeah,
this feels like
Yeah.
a higher budget sci-fi
Sharknado.
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of the way it plays out. It just some of the goofy humor and things that happened in it reminded me more of Dude, Where's My Car? That's why I mentioned it. So it's just it's that kind of goof. It's that style goofiness, but it's fun. And I think it's like number one at the box office this weekend, isn't it? With like a
I
100% Rotten Tomato viewer rating.
It is it's interesting to like hear like people that have seen this movie because I have actually like the people that I've talked to that are I feel like belong in the circles that we keep with like horror movies. I definitely feel like this is a movie that is made for people that are into schlock because it handles itself very schlock. But then they're on the opposite side, I feel like general audiences are kind of like, meh, like it was okay. So it's like I feel like for me as being in both the world of cinephiles and horror files, like I'm seeing both sides from both camps and they're completely different.
Yeah, and some of those people you're saying they're going, it's okay. They may be walking in with different expectations, like whereas like Mark said, if you walk in and you're like, okay, let's just go watch this one just to watch this one, it's good. But if you're going in with like a certain expectation, it may not meet that expectation.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen movies. Was it Nope? I went in. Why does it say I'm muted?
You're not muted.
Now he is.
Now he is.
Oh,
All right.
that's weird. Sorry
Mark,
about that.
let me count you in. So
I mean, it's one of those movies where if you knew what you were going to see, it was fun. It was awesome. But if you went in expecting like some serious creature feature monster horror and you went into this, you might be upset unless you're like one of the weirdos like us. Um, I mean, like Nope, I heard people were upset with, but they were going for a UFO movie and it was a creature feature and it had to do with the way it was advertised. We pretty much knew what to expect with this movie going into it. I think none of us were expecting anything less than what it was.
yeah,
So,
I also think that it's really weird when like people make like arguments of like not liking a movie when they're like, oh, this wasn't what it advertised. This is not what it like. The two like most recent examples I can give outside of this movie are Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix, where people were like, "Oh, it sucked," blah blah blah. I'm like, it literally the title is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Bunch of people die by a chainsaw in Texas.
Yeah.
Ergo, it delivers on the exact promise. A lot of people said the same exact thing for Halloween Kills. I'm like, there's a lot of there's a serial killer on the loose killing on Halloween.
No,
It
there
gives
wasn't.
you
Oh, so
exactly
I was thinking ends. Never mind.
it gives you exactly what it promised and what it set out to do. And this one is about a bear who injects, who gets a whole
Ingests.
ingests, yes, a whole bunch
Okay.
of cocaine. And you see the after effects of that. And you know, it gives you exactly what it wants. But I think that like it also too it knows what it wants to be. I love the fact that this movie, part of the reason that I had so much fun with it is because this movie understands its schlock and its camp and like really leans into the absurdity. I think the standoff scene where they're at the gazebo is one of the best examples of that to where like here you have two drug dealers in Alden Aaron Reich and o-shea-jackson-jr. standing off against the cop and this coke they find out that the bear has ingested all of the cocaine has become addicted and like it's this like slow motion like dance sequence with the bear and I was just like they are leaning into the absurdity. Like, this is what I'm here for. This is why this movie is so much fun.
Well, I think Elizabeth Banks, she did an interview where she basically said that if this movie didn't do well, it was going to bomb, and she was pretty sure it was the end of her career.
I love the fact that like Elizabeth Banks really takes chances on projects like these because this is when you look at her filmography as a director, she has two other features ahead of this one. She has Pitch Perfect 2 and Charlie's Angels, two films that are female centric and completely different in tone. And then you have a movie that is essentially a modern day 80s schlock film and horror creature feature like horror that feels akin to something you would find direct to video in the 80s, just with a higher budget and she absolutely nails it out the park. I've been saying this since I walked out of this. As far as she is concerned as a director, she can do anything at this point because I think that this is not only her best directed film at this point, but it's also probably one of the funniest films that she has ever been a part of.
Really?
I'm I no, I agree 100%. I mean, just going from the movies she's done to this is just like to me it's kind of like night and day because like you said, all the other ones were female driven, where this one is to me a comedy that just and it's got a little bit of horror and everything to it. And it would open up doors for her to do all kinds of things like this. And hey,
I
I
mean,
think this is going to be one of the better movies of this year, honestly. But that's
Same.
just me.
it's one of those movies where she might accidentally put herself in a spot to kind of this is your style, go do your style kind of thing.
I disagree because when you look at the difference and I watch a variety of movies and uh, I think I've really enjoyed the first Pitch Perfect. Pitch Perfect 2 was okay. I thought that it was a decent directorial debut from her, but it's very much a straight comedy that falls into sequel syndrome. A lot of the first a lot of the beats from that film happen to just feel almost like a copy and paste from the first Pitch Perfect. That's fine. Characters don't really progress that much the Charlie's Angels reboot, like, say what you will about it. Like, I know it's very divisive. It's a straight action movie. I had a lot of fun with it. It shows like really progression on her part as a director to kind of take something really like recognizable and kind of like modernize it, but kind of like make a female like version like James Bond with that brand. And I thought they did a really good job. It was a lot of fun, I thought. But I feel like for this film, again, it progresses her further as a director to kind of show that like here you have a film that is part horror, it's part comedy. It thrives and it balances on both. And I think from this film, I would love to kind of, you know, she's kind of seemed to do all of the everything aside from like family films. She's kind of really seemed to do all of the facets of comedy. And I would like to see her kind of progress forward to do something like a drama or like a straight up horror movie, like something akin to like the Shining or The Conjuring or a number of like other just straight really dark horror because I feel like with this one she really progresses her craft to a point where you see that she is not just this awkward funny chick anymore, like she has range.
Well, as an acting, or from an acting standpoint, she pretty much did everything. She really did. So,
Yeah, I mean she's done everything, you know, from franchises with the Hunger Games and the Lego movie, um, to let me pull up her filmography here.
she's done
Also
comedy.
Brightburn,
Yeah.
she's done horror. Obviously she was a part of all of the Pitch Perfects. She did a divisive job as Rita Repulsa in the Power Rangers reboot a few years ago.
I never
Uh,
saw that one.
she, you know, like just kind of going down. She's done like, you know, straight up comedies. She's done sex comedies. You know, she's done
Dramas.
TV dramas.
Yeah.
Um, and so she's definitely shown range as an actress. And I definitely think that like she's starting to get into this point with her craft to where she's transitioning that into being a director to where at this point I think this shows another project and it's a really bold move on her part to move away from something as hated as Charlie's Angels. If anything would have ended her career, I would have thought it would have been that. But I really am glad it didn't. And, you know, that we got something like Cocaine Bear.
Aren't they talking about sequels already? Like Adderall Alligator and
So they are talking about sequels, and of course, in the bringing up Sharknado later this year, we are of course getting uh the the people behind Sharknado already hard at work on a copycat called Attack of the Meth Gator, which is it they tweeted out the poster, made the announcement, I think Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, and it is a very, very real thing.
is this going to be the start of movies that start off as a joke that they just run with and decide, you know what, the joke caught on, let's do it.
I I
Because
think
we
so.
we got Murder Poo earlier this year. We got Cocaine Bear now. We have Crystal Meth Gators coming later.
In
Well,
that point, it's like, are they going to run it into the ground at a certain point of, okay,
Oh, it's Hollywood. They run everything into the ground.
exactly.
very, very yes. But my thing is that like when you look at the genre right now, there's no clear cut like direction for it, the way that there was in the early aughts where you had you know, a rise in French extremists. You had the torture porn. You had the remake boom. There's none of that that's we're currently seeing with that. I think the requel phase of Hollywood has kind of ended to where, like, yes, we're a couple weeks away from Scream 6, but that requel phase really rose into prominence with Halloween 2018. That trilogy has now ended. Uh, the Texas previously mentioned Texas Chainsaw didn't really do all that well amongst like fans and stuff like that. You know, and I think right now, like the landscape of horror is like this, like just big like field of clay where like filmmakers are just kind of doing what they want to do. And this just seems to be like the first like real like electric thing that we've seen actually catch like um catch like tension for like the first time in a long time.
Well, Terrifier 2 did. Terrifier
You are right. Terrifier 2 did.
2, there's a lot of curiosity surrounding Winnie the Pooh. Was it Blood and Honey?
I kind of want to see that. I'm planning on seeing that. Just I don't know. Just something.
I don't know. It seems like people want things that are different now, and the things that are coming out different that aren't mass-produced Hollywood garbage are catching a lot of traction.
But and on that movie, it's more of a taking something from everybody's childhood and just twisting it.
Yeah, Billy's right. Like I wouldn't necessarily say that we're looking for something new. I would say we're looking for something familiar that doesn't quite fit into the genre of horror, and we're molding it to fit into that genre. And I think you bring up a great point with Blood and Honey. Like it is kind of like the beginning of this new like movement amongst independent film producers, where last year we had The Mean One, which was a Grinch slasher. It was terrible. We had Blood and Honey a couple weeks ago. It was a fun time. But they're also like developing like a sequel to that. They're doing a Peter Pan one called Neverland Nightmare. They're doing a Bambi horror film. So they're really taking these like these IPs, and like once they're going into public domain, like developing something with like a sinister like bend to them, like akin to like Blood and Honey or The Mean One,
which is ultimately going to make for some fun times and some horrible times.
I was going to say I'm here for it. So next year they'll be coming out with like a Sonic that's like twisted and everything, and that I don't know, that just anything. Just I'd be here for some of those movies. Just something different, something like you said, familiar, but at the same time, like, yeah, that's really twisted.
Kind of miss the old summer camp slashers from back.
They still make them. They still make them
often. We got one last year, I think it was, a year before, with the Fear Street.
Yeah. Fear Street was the one that they 1976 was the one that they had done. But I think that I think right now like it's something like Cocaine Bear is like on the verge of, we could be on the cusp of seeing a revival of like horror trends, and that could necessarily mean like really good things. Like I walked out of this movie like really wanting to watch Sharknado movies and like just really bad cheesy movies, and I think that the copycats are inevitable at this point, and so like now I'm really curious about like what Meth Gator is going to be. Like it's now on my radar because I'm like, it didn't exist. And now like walking on a Cocaine Bear, I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. It'll probably end up on Tubi at some point this year, and I'll watch it.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also Veteran Hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
I mean, while we're at it, can we get like PCP Free Willy?
You got the well believing it can fly. Come on, man.
Josh is over there. He just perked up at that too. He was like, wait a second.
Nah.
They could call it like Abominable Willie.
It probably already exists. Let's head into spoiler territory. So if you guys haven't seen Cocaine Bear, we're getting ready to spoil it for you guys. And yeah, it's now playing in theaters everywhere from Universal Pictures. Gents, this movie is. Do we want to start with like the human characters with this one, just to kind of get it out of the way?
Yeah.
Clearly we're coming to a movie called Cocaine Bear for the bear and the deaths.
Yeah. I mean, start with the characters like I was saying before the spoilers. When it walks in and the kids are there, and then the first word is fuck. It's like, oh yeah, we're in for a good time, because it's like just some of those reactions they were giving. You walk in and the first scene is the guy, if I remember right, the guy is on the plane dancing around, kicking all that damn cocaine off the damn plane, and you're like, oh yeah, there's no way, but it's gonna be a good time.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the little blonde delinquent kid that was through half the movie, not the little kid, but the one that was with the drug dealers in the woods. I'm pretty sure that was the actor that was the older brother in Malcolm in the Middle, but I'm not positive. I also wasn't curious enough to look it up.
Kid? You mean the one that was, what was his name? Is it Aaron Holiday?
There was the three delinquents that had the knife.
None of them were. None of them were
Malcolm in the Middle.
No.
Okay. I thought it was the older brother from Malcolm in the Middle.
No.
Okay. Well, it looked like him. But yeah, that was, I mean, the absurdity of almost every storyline in this movie is part of what makes it. Is there's nothing that's just not completely like any story from it is just really, but it all goes together so well to make it super entertaining and just awesome.
Yeah, this movie really like just is fearless in its like delivery. Like, I don't know if you guys like felt this way, but there's a scene in the as the setup where Dee Dee and Henry, who are the kids, end up like they want to go to the waterfall, and Dee Dee's mom is played by Carrie Russell, just like can't do it because she's got to work, and so they skip school, they go into it, and they end up like stopping for lunch and like directions, and they end up stumbling upon a like a brick of cocaine. And Henry's like, yeah, he's like, I do cocaine all the time, you know, with the so and so from church. It's cool, man. It's and
they go, how do you? And she's like, how do you take it? Oh, you eat it. I'm like, oh no, this is not gonna be good.
So like the moment that like you have two 12-year-olds like actively like eating, what is it, like a teaspoon or a tablespoon? Like it was a tablespoon of like cocaine. You know that this movie is like just doesn't care, and they are just gonna make one of the most like funny, unapologetic, just bonkers storylines. And I think Mark, you mentioned this a couple minutes ago, but like all of the storylines in this like are just really bonkers and like really funny the way that they kind of like interact with one another. Um and just like really bow down to like absurdity. I think there's another scene too where the Olaf and his fiance, they're like hippie hikers
Yeah.
and they're like opposite side of the forest and they see the bear like, oh, it's a black bear, he's so cute. And they're like trying to like decipher like what to do as it gets closer. And again, they just really lean into the absurdity of this and they knew 100% the type of movie they were making and just like absolutely like just said F it to everything. Every expectation said we are gonna make the most 80s movie possible, and they did it.
I was going to say they nailed it because it's like on the pre-spoilers, you brought up the gazebo scene where the cop was standing on top, the guy was down at the bottom, and not even the bear included. Just the scene. I think that's the cop's name was what, Bob or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and David was the dealer. Anyway, they're the ones that were holding the guns against each other. He was trying to go get David was trying to get the gun, and Bob shot him. And somehow, I don't know fucking how he did it, but he shot two and missed a middle finger between the two fingers that he shot. And I mean, I was dying.
And
It was one of those scenes like,
and the kid
Really?
Stash or whatever his name is, he looks up, he's like, how do you even hit those two fingers? It's like,
yeah, exactly. And then it's like, then the bear shows up, but we'll go into that later. But yeah, it's just,
I almost feel like during early production of the movie, when they sat down to do read-throughs, she sat all the actors down and everybody involved was like, okay, we're making a movie called Cocaine Bear. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Pretty sure it's ridiculous. And we may not have jobs after this, but we're just going for it. And that's kind of how this movie plays out. It's so funny. Like the gazebo scene is just it's
I
so
want to know
funny.
how much was and wasn't scripted because I have a feeling she's like, go with it. If you're in the scene, go with it. And a lot of times with movies, those turn out to be better than the scripted part.
Yeah.
When they're going with their feeling and it just meshes. It's like that we're saying the gazebo scene. I mean, come on, there's some of that in there that I don't think you would have written without just
The gazebo scene was one of the best, though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that whole scene was fantastic. But you hear stories a lot about comedies in general, specifically comedies more so than others. Like Robin Williams would have to do like 7 and 8 takes on scenes because he just made shit up as he went and would bust up the whole crew.
Yeah,
and they ended up
exactly.
being some of the best movies. And I feel like they might have done a lot of that here too. It's just, you know what, we're gonna wing it. Here's where we have to get to. Here's where we're starting. Just figure it out as you go, kind of thing. And when you get good actors with good wit, like Ryan Reynolds right now is one of the best. Eddie Murphy back in the day was one of the best. It ends up working.
I think one of the things too that like I think in almost 50 episodes again we've established that like I am very much the cinephile. I probably had the most to say in terms of like the more nitty-gritty side, more technical side of this movie. But O-shea-Jackson Jr., who plays David in this, if those guys that don't know, he is the son of Ice Cube in this movie.
Yes.
And he is one of my favorite actors working today.
I was wondering if there was some relation there or if they just made him up intentionally to kind of look like him. But that is his son.
That is his son. And
Okay.
here, if you guys have never seen it, Straight Outta Compton is one of the best, if not the best, biopic that we have gotten in the last 15 years. It's about NWA's rise and fall, and he plays his father in that movie and does an incredible job. Um,
Yeah, it's a very good movie. I mean, if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. Just that movie is just dead on a lot of stuff, and it's one of those when you watch it, you want to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, like I ended up rewatching it actually like this past week and like logged into my letterbox and I was like, dude, why have I not watched this movie like more often? I love that movie.
I've
But
actually never seen that one.
I will find a way to make you watch it. It is
Yeah.
incredible. But Jackson, like everything that I've ever seen him in, he just absolutely knows like how to transform himself into he's one of these actors working today that when you watch him on the screen, you're not just watching an actor playing someone, you're seeing an actor that's like actually knows his craft and like knows how to bring that character personality and charm and like depth. Like it feels weird to say this, but like there is a little bit of depth to a movie like Cocaine Bear. And I think there is levity because of Jackson. I know you're laughing, Mark, but like I think there is this movie has a little bit of surprisingly like of heart, and I think it's because of the relationship between Jackson and Aaron Reich, who plays Eddie in this movie, and
Don't
you know
forget
that
John.
and John.
Yeah, John was in it. You don't remember? You don't remember John? John is like one of the biggest things on there.
It was
Just
a
remember,
running
it's got to
joke the
change
whole
to
movie.
Joni once he
Oh,
in a
Joni.
couple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was
6 days
running
until
joke.
John. Uh, yeah, I think that like again, I think it just really comes down to like he's probably one of the best performances in this movie, hands down.
Yeah, he somehow almost the way everything plays out, he almost ends up the main character.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely here for that 100% because this is probably the first time I've seen him in like a true comedy as a leading role. And I love like I know Ice Cube makes a lot of like divisive comedies. You either really love them or you really hate them. Uh, I I really like Ice Cube comedies. I think like movies like, Barbershop and like Ride Along and Are We There Yet and
Yeah.
Friday, like movies like that, like they're not they're fun. There are a lot of movies like this, and I think that like I walked out of this movie and I was like, man, I was like, I would love a buddy film, like a buddy cop film between like father and son, between the two of them. I just think that would be a lot of fun
Or have a new Friday come out
with
With
him.
father and son.
with both of them.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I said with father and son. Yeah, that would be pretty good too.
Yeah, I'd be here for that.
So,
Um,
yeah, he almost the way everything plays out, the way it's made out in like previews and everything is Kerry Russell and Ray Liotta seem to be the main characters. But you
yeah.
get into the movie
It
and
doesn't feel like
everybody's
that.
almost a side character except for him. He's the only one that's in and out of almost every scene through the whole movie in some aspect.
And this movie has a lot of familiar faces in it. I mean, like the cop Bob, I know that I've seen him in some other movies. I can't think of what they are right now, but he was a cop in the other movies. And it's one of those like you saw that and it's like, oh my God, yeah. He plays the cop role pretty good when it comes to the comedy aspect of it and just the delivery and the way he does some of his lines and all. It's yeah. I
Yeah, so like just to piggyback off of that, he did a movie in 2018 called The Good Cop. But he also has done like he did a movie a couple years ago called Defy Bloods with Spike Lee, worked with him again on Black Klansman. He definitely has that um that like cop quality about him, but I feel like the reason that he works here is because like he's kind of taking that archetype and like making it like almost like a parody. Because like his subplot throughout the course of this is like he's a detective with like big city dreams, right? So like he goes just by himself to like catch the like Sid, who's played by
Yeah.
Leota, and like the all the guys, because like at the beginning of the movie, David and Eddie let it slip that they're sent out to go get this all of this cocaine, and he just basically follows, and he's like, I'm just gonna go. And like his whole thing is that he has this like very small dog,
Yeah.
and
You
he
brought it up before I could.
his
Yeah.
like subplot is like is that he didn't necessarily want the small dog. There's a scene in the movie where he's like he wants the big dog. He wanted
The
the
lab.
man's best
Yeah.
friend type.
That one where he's daydreaming, where he's
Yeah.
daydreaming of the dog he actually wants, and then all of a sudden, after his daydreaming, he's on the phone talking to, I don't know, SPCA, whatever, but he's
I
on the
wanted a
phone talking to
lab.
somebody, and when he hangs up, he's like, "Yeah, it's not the dog. I wanted the lab." And then he suddenly, beside the desk, pulls up a box with this little white dog in it, and I'm like,
With
"Oh
bows in
man,
its
that."
fur. You
I also think
can't leave
it's
out the bows.
yeah, I thought it was funny too that like anytime you also like saw but it's like it's in anytime you saw the dog, it was in a banker's box. So
Yes.
it's like you're led to believe that like the relationship he has with his dog is that he just takes it everywhere with him.
Or, I mean, if this was a serious movie, I would be like, maybe that's giving you the aspect of he's boxing his personality in somewhere and not showing that, and only showing like the cop side, trying to
You're
increase his, you
you're
know,
reaching. You're
I know I'm
reaching.
reaching. Hey,
I
No,
I
no,
can
feel
no, no. Like
reach.
I feel like the whole point of the dog was made clear at the beginning of the movie when he starts talking to the other cop about, did you ever have a dog? I think he was trying to get a dog to impress her. I think that was the whole
which
oh,
purpose of the
which that
dog.
uh,
bit him in the ass anyway.
yeah. Which like how did you guys feel about like that whole like dirty cop like quote unquote twist at the end with his partner?
It's one of those, like, after you've seen so many cop movies, so many cop TV shows and all, you already know that there is somebody that's slipping information
Yeah.
to the dealer, and it's only shown so many characters at this point, so you're like, it's got to be her. It's got to be her, because that was the second main cop character, not counting the park ranger, that kind of showed up in the movie.
Yeah, it's really not a huge surprise that it ends up happening. It just kind of felt like I have very few complaints about this movie, but that's probably one of them where like I would have I don't know, they probably could have like spun it with him to where he's a rogue cop and like he's
Yeah.
got this like really like tough like exterior, and the only reason that he like has the dog in the first place is to like ground him and make him feel a little bit more like just over the top.
No, I think it goes back to the fact that it's going to fit in that category movie with Dude, Where's My Car? That's complete, just total brainless fun.
That's fair.
And you're just
Like
trying to find some sort of deeper meaning in things when there's none there to be found. It is what
Hey,
it is.
that's
there.
why I said I would have liked.
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
necessarily need it.
well, on a different note, there is one thing that was kind of like serious. It almost kind of, I don't know if it was supposed to be like a throwaway line or whatever, but the Sid's son was that Christopher or something. Is that right? Anyway, he his whole character arc is that his wife passed away, and they said one line to where she passed away of cancer. That's like the one thing that was serious that I picked up in the whole movie. And being everything I've experienced, I'm just gonna go ahead and say this now so we can go back to the fun part. Always get checked, always just keep up with it because that's not a fun thing. But yeah, that's the one line that kind of like was serious to me. Other than
I
that,
think
I loved it.
I think it's not just like a one line because like that defines Eddie's character for probably until he meets the blonde haired kid. Like after the three kids try to stab Ice Cube's
That's just
son,
fun.
in the it after they tried to like shank David and he like hands them their lunch. Like you don't really he's really out of it. He doesn't want to be there, and that's kind of like his whole thing is that like his whole arc throughout the whole movie is that like he wants to be uh, he's in mourning, but also at the same time like he wants to be a better friend to David. He wants to be a better father to his son. And there's a point too, like where there's a little bit of like a serious like moment throughout the course of it where like um Sid is like wanting to like go follow it and he's like no, he's like look man, we just need to go back, like this is a hopeless cause. And I think this movie like definitely harkens on the journey of like grief and how grief can definitely affect those around you. It doesn't just affect you. Like, granted,
Exactly.
also the decisions that you make in your grief is going to have a pivotal point. Like, it made him basically like, I don't want to say
Abandon his kid.
necessarily a deadbeat dad, but like, yeah, like it's established that like he's got an 8 or 9 year old in this movie, and throughout the entire course of this process, it's been left with this like his drug dealer dad, Sid.
Yeah. And also it's like not showing just the way he's handling, but how people around him are trying to come to him and try to help him with this grief, where his dad is to back off the, okay, we're giving him time, I'm taking care of the kid and all, where his friend is, no, I'm going to push you, I'm going to try to bring you back. I could see that it's time for you to come back and we want to help you. So
I kind of felt like Ray Liotta saw his kid as an asset to the business more so than anything else.
yeah,
Oh, he
that may be
100%
true.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no support there. He was just an asset as far as he was concerned.
Well, I mean, Ray Liotta in this movie, like, rest his soul, like, does a great job. Like, Ray Liotta is made a
In this
career out of playing
isn't this one of
characters.
his last movies?
Yeah. The
So,
movie.
yeah, there's a couple more movies he's got coming out. I think he's got like 2 or 3 other ones.
He was
But
one of those, he would go a span of a couple of years putting out a bunch of movies and then he would kind of disappear for a little while. Then he'd come back and do a bunch of movies and then disappear for a little while.
I
There's
mean,
a
I'm
handful of
okay with
actors
that.
that's done that over the years, and he was one of them. But we actually, funny enough, we ended up watching one of his old 90s movies the other night. Was
Which
it
one?
No Escape, where he was on the prison colony island?
Nice.
That's a
Yeah.
good movie.
But yeah, like it's very he's established like very on like he's very self-centered. He like dude, I like cheered internally like when he gets mauled by the bear at the end. Because like they established it, dude. Like he very, very much like is absolutely like
Yeah,
I mean, he
asshole.
deserves everything that like he had coming to him.
Yeah,
Um
they
When the
let you know
theater
up front that he was
cheers,
an
that I
asshole.
mean, I'm saying when the theater cheers, I mean, come on, man.
yeah. Like and again, like I think that that's like and he's kind of like tired and over this, but here's the thing is that like grief doesn't have an expiration date. Like, yeah, there should be a healthy cutoff point that you should establish for your own mental health, but everyone is 100% different. Like,
Exactly.
uh, it's different, but like when I like lost my grandmother as a young child, like I grieved her for several years into my adulthood and like never really healthily dealt with that until like I understood and like had a grasp on grief. And so like properly also understanding the grieving process and like what it does to your mental health and like healthily working through it is also something that you need to understand and do.
No, I agree with you 100%. For instance, I don't think I've said it on here. A couple of years ago, I did lose my wife to cancer. So my wife at the time passed away from breast cancer that metastasized and went all over her body, basically. So that's kind of why I push, hey, go get checked. I was probably in a dark place. That's why Mark got me to come on the show, kind of pulled me into his house, kind of, hey, come watch the fights. Now I'm in a lot better place than what I was. It did take a couple years, but I'm there. So, like
Has
he
it been a
said,
couple years?
yeah, 2001. Yeah. So I'm in a lot better place. I'm, you know, back to where I was probably just so. And Mark, I appreciate you for that.
Well, you were doing nothing but sitting home all the time.
Hey,
So
grief
all I
is
did
grief,
was
man.
push.
Grief is grief, like
Yeah.
100%. And like I think that's what like the mental health of this movie, for as like ridiculous as it is, you also have to lump in David into that conversation, because like you see in the post-credit scenes that like, you know, they not only like had this like weird
Yeah.
experience together, so they're kind of like bonded, but also he's helping them kind of like cope and like continue on. And I think one of the best, you kind of get this like early inkling of like where their relationship has been early on in the movie when they're driving, and he apologizes for not being there for him during everything that happened with Joan. And it's never kind of like explained as to why it is, but like you can definitely understand that like there is guilt and there is remorse, and he is trying to mend that. So it's also like stressing the importance of like healthy community during this, because we all like when one part of community grieves, we all grieve.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Yeah, and sometimes it's somebody that's not directly involved that can help you get through it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now on that post credits that you were just talking about, the fact that he said the line was, they were never going to sew him back on anyway. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I had to switch the mood a little bit here, but yeah, he reaches around, reaches in the pocket. Now, I don't know if he dropped them, if the bear got him, whatever, but his line is,
the dog was eating them.
oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Because I turned my head a second.
There's a scene where the bad cop hands the dog in a box to the grieving dude whose wife had just died.
Eddie.
Yeah.
And he starts perking up and he's like, oh, I'll take him back to my kid. And they set him down in the truck in the box and turn around and he's chewing on something. Like, what is he eating? And they figured out it was the two fingers.
Oh, that's what I missed.
Yeah.
I honestly missed that part, but
and then he tells me he's like they wouldn't have been able to sew him on anyway.
Well,
that line was just hilarious.
Yeah, what a way to end your movie too. There's a line, there's a Simpsons episode where Homer actually like Marge cuts off one of Homer's hands, and they stop at Moe's very briefly so that he can get ice on the way to the hospital. And one of the things that I think is so funny about that is that like it reminds me of that. And I think it's one of the things The Simpsons taught me is that you have to keep it on ice. So like if
Yeah.
you're keeping it in like Georgia dry heat, there ain't no way that they're getting like put back on. They're just gonna be aesthetic at that point.
In your pocket,
Yeah.
running around through the woods, being chased by a drug addicted bear.
Well, hold
Yeah.
on. In the post scenes, you almost had, what was it, sheep or whatever, until he second thought that and grabbed the bag and put it in the truck with him. I thought they were going to leave that
Yeah.
as a sequel. Like he leaves it in the back without thinking, and all of a sudden they all start eating it and just going wild in the truck. That set up the sequel for the next movie.
Dude,
Well, the kid still ended up with a bag of cocaine to go sell.
Yeah.
yeah, I was honestly really here for that. I would have been like,
What,
because man,
cocaine
sheep,
sheep?
yeah, sheep can be savage, dude.
Oh, dude.
You ever seen
Yeah.
you ever seen the video of the sheep walking up on the cow and the cow decides to charge him? Or is a bull, one or the other? And the sheep knocks the cow out cold. I'm
I
guessing
have
neither
not.
one of you have ever seen that.
I haven't
No.
seen that.
I will look for that video and send it to you. But
Okay.
yeah, they line up and go at it, charge, and you see both of them fall down, and the sheep kicks and gets right back up and walks off.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Over in Germany, they have sheep just out in the valleys and everything. You could see that where they charge each other, much less the people that walk up on them if you're not careful. So just imagine that all coked up. That would have just been one of those hilarious and fun times to me. It would have been just, yeah. So I was here for it. I was waiting, and then you could see the motion of where he's like, nope, that's not going to happen.
I think ultimately all it was he recognized the bag and knew what was in it.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's really like no other explanation with that. How did you guys think about like the kid's crew where like they basically like tried to like create a whole bunch of like just trouble in the wake of in this like small like little park?
I think it was more expendable characters.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
it
mean,
100% was expendable characters.
I think I was more entertained by the outcome of the park ranger.
I had the reaction
Yeah.
of kind of like the park ranger, like, that's y'all? Y'all are the ones I'm looking for? Y'all are the ones causing this problem? It's like, yeah, it's there, but it didn't give a lot into it. It kind of like gave the storyline for Kid for the most part, but the rest of them were just, expendable.
Well, she reminded me of the teacher from the Evil Dead remake who just continually is punished the
Oh,
entire story
yeah.
arc. And she's just continually beat up and punished and mauled and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the scene where she's like, hey, open the door. I'm going to shoot the bear. And then the kid, not Kid, but one of the other ones opens the door. I think his name was like Ponytail or something. And he opens the door, and instead of moving out of the damn way, he stands there as she shoots the gun. And it's just one of those like,
Well, she closes her eyes
dumbass.
and turns her head before pulling the trigger.
Yeah, but she had already said what she was going to do. So it was like, dude, I don't care if she closed her eyes and turned her head. She's already said she's getting ready to shoot that gun. Move out of the damn way.
Yeah. I think it's also too like I think the deaths in this movie are like really really creative. Like she probably had the best one or probably one of the most brutal ones where the bear is like attacks the ambulance and she just comes out and like the gurney that she's strapped into does a twist and she just gets dragged on this like road. And I honestly thought that she was gonna get up from that.
I did.
And then
too.
was
then you
waiting
see the
for it.
kids, and I was like, oh, I guess she's not. Like I don't necessarily mind that she's not getting up for it. But like she
Yeah,
just kind of seemed
I like when they're walking out at the
relentless.
end and they pass her in the ambulance and she's
And
like,
she's
no,
like,
don't look
"Don't
at it,
look.
kids.
Yeah, don't look. You
Like,
don't want to see that."
and you hear the kids yell, but I want to look.
Yeah. Yeah. I think her death was like, is any other like deaths that like really stood out to you guys in this one?
I mean, I liked one of the scene. I don't think it was a death because he got up from it. He eventually died in dealing with the bear with that scene you were just talking about, but where he goes in and she's the park ranger's dealing with the nurse or the other doctor or whatever, and she picks up the stethoscope and says, "Bear." And then the bear comes running out of the room and hits the door and just starts jumping up and down on the door like a trampoline. It's just
Yeah.
that I was dying laughing. And I mean, there's some other scenes like one of the, I forget which character it was, where the hand kind of gets chopped off, but it's still hung on there. And you can see inside the wrist, inside the hand. And that's the campy feel I was talking about before. It's just like you're there for it and it's bloody. It's not as bloody as you'd expect, but you know, they kind of lean towards, you know, blood and guts and everything on the hand.
I know they relied quite a bit on CGI for the bear, but it seemed like the rest of the effects were traditional.
Exactly.
That's what I thought too. Like I wanted to get your guys' opinion on that because I mean, like obviously the bear's gonna be CGI.
Yeah. I mean, how are you supposed
But
to have a cocaine bear actor on set?
you bring back the boyfriend from Midsommar, you know?
I thought
Problem
we were going to
solved.
send Mark there. Mark could be the cocaine bear.
Are you calling me fat? That sounds like
No.
you're calling me fat.
No. So
Yeah,
I mean, that's like
yeah.
last night. Mark was saying he wasn't feeling too good. And Mark, what was my line to you? Do you remember?
I know a guy in
Looking too
Tennessee.
good.
I know a guy in Tennessee.
Oh.
We can go get some stuff for you.
Uh, I think it's really like also too like one of the death sequences that's really just kind of struck me as really funny is the sequence where Peter Peter and Henry are in the two trees and
Yeah.
Peter accidentally like has like ingested like a whole bunch of cocaine and he's like the weird like hippie boyfriend of the park ranger and
Supposedly there to check out the park. Yeah.
yeah and like he's like bears can't climb trees and he's like yeah they can he's like so that he like of course you see it and like he just absolutely gets it. I was like dude all right I'm here for this.
And I'm pretty sure there was one scene where the little kid inhaled some coke too, the little blonde kid, because he makes the comment, "Why?" Something along the lines of, "Why do I suddenly have so much energy?"
I wouldn't
Yeah
be
he
afraid. I mean, I
he
wouldn't be shocked if they did it a lot and you didn't realize it, like constantly
Well,
inhaling it.
because him and the girl both like tried to eat a spoonful and spit it all out, but he does something that blows like a cloud up in his face. And as he's walking away, he's like, "Why do I have so much energy?" It's like,
see I took it as like he like actually had the coke in his system. So like while he like spits it out, like I do think that you probably had like some like residuals that like still
Exactly.
exist
well,
there.
I feel like there was no way neither one of them takes that big of a mouthful of coke and doesn't get some in their system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you've ingested it at that point. I don't care if you spit it out or not. It's a powder. It's gonna go into your system regardless.
Yeah. That sounds about right. I'm trying to think if there's like any other gags in this movie that I think worked really well. We haven't talked about the comedy aspect of this movie as well. Like I think this is probably one of the first films I've experienced in a long time that like I have laughed so hard that I was actually in tears. And that
Oh,
never happens during
It's,
comedies.
I mean, I actually like we've had a few movies we reviewed where you're like, "Oh no, it was sci-fi, it wasn't really horror." I felt like this was more of a comedy. It was a comedy, not so much a comedy horror.
I
I
mean, I
Like,
Go
mean,
ahead, buddy.
comedy, yeah, comedy, yeah,
it
but
kind
it
of
did
felt
lean
like
into the, like I was saying earlier, and when I say campy, I don't mean it bad because I'm here for it. It's a campy kind of feel of an 80s horror movie built into the comedy. So it's one of those like, yeah, I did. I loved this movie just for what it was.
it kind of made me think of if they took Great Outdoors, the end scene, and then just coked the bear up.
Yeah, I didn't
I
think about that.
so my takeaway from this is that I would dare to say that this leans into horror because I mean this is a creature feature essentially, but
Right.
it feels like a traditional comedy that just happens to have horror elements in it. But I think that it balances both of the genres really well.
Well, we had a similar discussion when we talked about Terminator.
We did, yeah,
That's
which
actually
will be
what that's.
releasing later this week.
Oh, that's coming this week. Sweet.
That is coming this week, so you guys can hear it. It is our 50th episode, and we did it with the
Andrew
vocalists
from
from Evergreen Terrace.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um
But
but yeah,
that was
I
another one you thought was more a sci-fi movie with horror
I still feel
elements.
that way.
It's
But
even though it follows the like Halloween, Friday the 13th formula.
yes.
So it's that kind of, it felt more like a comedy with some, I guess, creature feature aspects than a creature feature with some comedy aspects.
Yeah, but I think like this movie just made me like had me in stitches.
Oh, it's fun.
Uh
Yeah.
I'm not
everything
saying
about
it
this
was a bad
movie.
movie. I'm just saying it was more of a comedy as far as I was concerned. I wouldn't saw a comedy, not so much of a creature feature or slasher
That's
or
fair.
horror.
And I know we're going to lean in the gazebo scene in a minute anyway with the comedy aspect of it. But one of the other scenes I actually thought was hilarious, or one of the lines is like, Cube's son was, he was in there just cleaning up and those other guys try to jump him and they get done.
Oh
He
yeah.
beats all their asses. And then it's kind of like something I would have said, like, damn it, they messed up my jersey. This is my favorite jersey. Why can they mess up my jersey? And I'm like, I feel you on that. I got it. I wouldn't want my jersey messed up either. But it was just one of those lines of, yeah, he's more worried about the jersey than the knife in his back.
Well, I mean, he
I
did
love
something
that.
similar at the beginning when he stepped in the ketchup
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and
exactly.
his shoes.
Yeah.
And I just bought these shoes.
Which
Yeah,
yeah, I thought that was absolutely hysterical. The way that he was able to like that was like a running gag for his character. To where like he ends up eventually like once he loses his fingers, like he's got to wrap the jersey in it.
Exactly.
And it's gone by
It's
this
gone
point. Like
now.
you're not coming
You're
back from this.
you're gonna burn it when we're done. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's
But
a
So
fun movie.
but
It's a fun movie either way.
one of my favorite gags though, now I'm going to the gazebo scene. One of my favorite gags is the bear just coming up. The guys are already laying on the ground because he's told them, lay down on your stomach on the ground. And the bear comes up and just drops on the one guy. Just
yeah,
drops.
oh yeah.
And
How do you
then
know
they're
how
like,
do you know
move.
it's a girl?
Yeah, they're like, move him. Move the bear. Can you push him off? He's like, it's a girl. They're like, how do you know? It's like, I'm pretty sure he knows it's a girl if the bear's laying on top of him. So
Because its vagina is in my
in my
ear.
ear. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this movie is it's a fun time. I honestly can't wait to own this movie. I really hope that there's
I feel
like you
like
were
there's going to
saying,
be a
Billy,
director's cut.
there has to
Yeah.
I want a director's cut and I want to see the outtakes from this movie.
Yeah, that
Um
too.
I can't imagine like being in a place where you're like, yeah, like this is a serious movie and it's like, is it though?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, like I said earlier, I want to see the outtakes because I guarantee this is one of the times the director said, have fun with it. And if they had fun with it, some of the lines that they probably came up with that didn't make the movie, I mean, they may just be as hilarious as what's made the movie. So
Yeah. For real. So, man, I think that's gonna do it for us on this episode of Abyss Gazing. But yeah, I think this movie is ends a really weird trilogy of episodes we established on last week with Possession and The Outer Waters and now Cocaine Bear. We'll be back in a couple days talking about The Terminator. But until then, where you guys can find us wherever you guys get your podcast from, simply search Abyss Gazing. Billy, where can people find you online?
Actually, just hit up Mark to find me. That's going to be the easiest way.
He lives on Facebook sometimes.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
yeah. Mark knows how to find me.
And of course,
Right.
I'm getting ready to do like a picture dump of a ton of models I'm completing over the next week on my Instagram, a titanium juggernaut painting.
All right. Well, you guys can find me. I'm on Letterboxd at Captain Nostalgia, and you guys can also find our parent company, Victims and Villains, of course, at victimsandvillains.net, our official website, or you guys can also follow us on socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and of course, wherever you guys get your podcasts from, where you guys can also check out our other podcasts in our network, which also include Brilliant But Lazy, our Marvel / pop culture Animines, our anime podcast, and our Nicolas Cage podcast. That's high praise. So until next time, remember that the longer you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you. Have a good one, guys.